Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us again at Beyond Hegemony. Today, I have my lovely co-host Shahana, and we have a special guest, Isvari. Hey, Isvari, thanks for joining us.
So glad to be here. My pleasure.
And we've been jumping through hurdles to get Isvari on here, and finally she made it. So I wanted to just ask you, what does beyond living beyond hegemony? Well, first of all, let our audience know who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Of course. So I'm currently the CEO of UVoice. We are a nonprofit that is revolutionizing how people think about being online and social media. We really believe that social media has, in large part, struggled because it's for profit and because of for profit motives. And we're thinking about ways to connect people that actually reward people for doing good in the world, help people create micro and macro movements, uplift diverse voices, and then have a place where their voice can be heard without being squashed or without, facing the problems we've all seen on sort of current social media. So I'm really passionate about media, about technology, about society and friendship, and just like the loneliness epidemic. And we're working on solving all of those issues with sort of an online third space in Town Square for Superheroes. So that's what I do in my day job. I'm an attorney. I practiced law for a while, and then before that I was in journalism and physics, and I also have had side sort of careers in art and music over the years. So that's a little bit
Wow.
about me.
Wow. Wow. See, this is why I wanted Zari on here. She's doing the type of beyond hegemony work that we need. We need to transform the for profit model, capitalistic model, in order to truly connect, not just this,
100%.
not this phony connection stuff that's happening in the world. Um, and also kind of like imprisoning us. So, what does beyond hegemony look like to you?
Yeah. So, it's funny that you use that word hegemony, because when I was in international relations as an undergrad, right, we spoke about it all the time. And I will never forget being in my international relations class first year and thinking the world was like multipolar, right? That there are a lot of countries that matter. And like, this is just how I was raised. This was what I thought. And they'll tell you first class in IR in the United States that actually we live in a unipolar world. And I think in terms of power and military and nuclear weapons, that was true for a lot of our childhood, that the United States was so powerful that people looked at it as a unipolar world with the US in power, with US hegemony worldwide. And I feel like a lot of my life subsequently has been unlearning and thinking about how we can sort of break down some of those assumptions that center the entire world and all of our society around what makes sense under a Western, American specific, capitalistic, patriarchal, white, and not just white, but like WASP, American
Mm,
model. And this has gone through every aspect of my life, my personal life, my social life, just expectations of friendship, right? I have a background from India, and I have lived in Europe and just around the world frequently. And one of the things, but I was also born and raised in California in America, and one of the big differences I see is just that expectation of friendship and society and what it means to give back and
mm,
have a community. And in the United States, right, and with that hegemony attitude that we are the most powerful, there's a lot of what I now consider to be toxic boundary setting or weaponizing therapy speak, just thinking about like, what can I do for me? What can the country do for me? What can the world do for me? I do not need to give anything back. I have a right to whatever it is that I want. And a part of this is literally just a different way about looking at society. And in America, right, there's individualism first. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, right? But there's
mhm,
the assumption that that's the only model that is appropriate for friendships, relationships, workplace cultures, etc. And that, I think, is wrong. There are
mm,
so few places for people who want to build a community where the community comes first, where there are obligations to your friends, your family, and society simply by existing in the world. And I firmly believe believe that as people, especially people with privilege, and I consider myself to have so much privilege, let alone the people I'm talking about even more privilege, have that sort of duty to give back, to leave the world a little bit better than we found it, and to think about the ways in which we can make the world a better place. And so often I see the people doing that work are women, people of color, queer people with disabilities, people who actually have less privilege, but who are, and I don't want to say self-sacrificing, because of course you have to protect yourself, you have to keep your mental health and your sanity, and you have to make sure you're protecting yourself as well. But they are willing to sacrifice some of their time and energy to help the world become better. And so for me, U Voice and the organization we're working on right now, which is majority minority, it's majority global, not US based, not from Silicon Valley. But I am, but we're not all from the Silicon Valley. We're not a traditional tech company. And we're a nonprofit. To me, that's the epitome of everything that I've been working towards for so long and criticizing in terms of our social relationships, the way our media operates. International media today is so driven by advertisers and money, and governments have been, sponsored by lobbyists, or that their positions have been bought out for money. And I think so much of our world has turned into what money can buy and how money operates, to the point where it feels counterculture to even suggest that money might not be the most important thing. And I'll just end with something I learned very recently while diving into a bit more about historical societal cultures and community cultures. I'm often told at U Voice that you can't motivate people by telling them they can do good in the world, or by rewarding people for doing good, because people care about money. How are they going to make money? How are they going to brand build? How are they going to be an influencer on this platform? Because it's a very different platform. It's not about content creation. And I watched this amazing video. Basically, back in the old days, people used to say money evolved because the barter system wasn't working, right? You would be like, here's a fur, right? Here's a fur in exchange for a spear. But what if you don't have an extra fur, right? Or what if they don't want a spear? So you need to have some coin that you can exchange so that you can value that. And that's how money got created. Turns out that's actually not true. In most societies that did a barter system, it's not, here's a fur, give me a spear. It's, I have 10 furs, 9 are extra. I'm just going to give them to my friends. And in fact, that whole the way that gratitude makes us feel, and belonging, and generosity, the fact that we feel good about doing that is not, it is part of our genetics. It's part of how we evolved to survive. It's what makes humans human. It's not a flaw. It's literally how we are meant to survive. And so I am really excited about hopefully making some impact at bringing the world a bit closer to that and helping people reconnect. Because it's really sad if you think about it. We have so much privilege in the modern world, and we have so much to access, and we aren't happy because we've lost on one of the most important things in the world, which is human connection and grassroots connection. And so for me, that's really what Beyond Hegemony means. It's been that unlearning over the past decade.
Yes, that was amazing. Shahana, you have any questions or anything
Oh,
to
I'm
add?
just completely blown away by how you summarized, the hegemonic forces of the USA and the USA's mistaken belief in its own exceptionalism,
Ugh,
which the rest of the world really doesn't, hold up. But they have gotten into this fallacy of thinking they are supreme, and this whole so what you mentioned about media, and of course, because it's driven by advertisement, you can't really call it media. It's more like a propaganda machine, right? It's working overtime to propagandize and indoctrinate. So what has
absolutely.
happened is, and you summarized it so beautifully, I really have nothing much to add, except that one point is, I believe that kind of that propagandized, indoctrinated veil or illusion or delusion is kind of lifting. It's falling apart a little, and there are more and more people like you, like us, who are seeing through that propaganda. So now, of course, the hegemony is making the propaganda work overtime because, well, they only know how to do things one way, right? So they double down and do what they just know what to do, even though it's not working.
Yeah.
So they kind of keep doubling down and doing the same old on repeat, rinse and repeat. But what I'm seeing, or sensing rather, seeing is the wrong word in this context. What I'm sensing is not only a disenchantment with the unipolar world that started a long time ago, but
Mm-hmm.
also a very strong resistance forces, of course, all over the world. to unipolarity and rising multipolarity. But see, these are all state level powers, nation state level power differentials are existing. And so, whether it's USA or China or Russia or other countries, they are all led by certain kinds of power dynamics.
Hmm.
But what I'm also sensing is another rise, simultaneous, parallel, and kind of simultaneous, parallel, but not state or nation state led, not power hegemony country led, but people led. And people
Hmm.
across the world, through various movements, are really building very different spaces and narratives and communities. They are kind of ripping apart the myth of the individual only, and everyone is out there looking for their community. And these communities, I believe, are becoming, may I say, like little microcosms of what we are hoping to see in the world.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
just love what you said and your experience of it. So
I
thank
love the
you.
whole idea of that platform. And at one point, I was saying I was going to write something for you guys, and life happened, started lifing. And then what I love about Gen Z, you would be considered Gen Z. She's a baby. Uh, but I love that there is this determination and almost like we have nothing to lose. We're going to do it the way that we seem fit, that seems fit. And I think that if just one or two generations before that would have had that cognizance of that, we wouldn't be where we are right now. And
Yeah,
what's happening right now, and I think that the certain powers of the world, um, predominantly ones that are bombing these ones in Palestine. There's actually free Palestine underneath this, but it wouldn't fit into the frame. They didn't, what they thought was that that insane propaganda machine was going to continue to work, you know? And what really happened is everybody woke up. And I think we have
yeah,
a global awakening happening, and those practices, they just seem insane. They just seem insane for the first time. But the one thing I wanted to touch on is the individualism piece that you talked about.
Yeah.
I love that because for so long, I'm a community driven person forced into individuality because I was born too soon to be a Gen Zer. Let's just put it that way. I was born too soon to be a Gen Zer. But my mind has always thought in that way. And therefore, that creates a certain isolation in, you say it in the British way, hegemony, you know? This British way of saying it, hegemony. And, but it has been a purposeful isolation because I had to go over into my own bubble to heal. I didn't like what was out there. So I said, okay, I've got to go into this bubble and I've got to leave the United States, travel as much as I can, experience as much as I can, go on my journey, basically being a Afro hippie. And it's like I'm so grateful that this is happening right now. Sometimes I get super emotional about
Yeah.
it, but also a part of me gets really pissed off at the people because I'm sitting here going, I told you. I told you. Since we wouldn't be here right now if you would have stopped buying that $5 Starbucks every day.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you found that. I feel like I've also, now that I don't live in the United States, I've been a lot, it's taken me so long just to feel calm about that concept that I might not be shot, especially in the countryside, that
I know, right?
like, it's taken me months just to calm down. I went to a D-Day celebration in the small town that I'm staying in, And I find things like that very fascinating because, you know, there was a sense, even then, right, there was a sense on like a unity on like not Nazism is bad. Something so simple that I think we've lost today, even from a generation that honestly was still learning so much about racism and sexism. Like it wasn't like they were woke by today's standards, but there was a sense of like, okay, we still have some sense of right and wrong. And there's this lack of ability to necessarily sometimes apply that to the modern world. But regardless, right, like it was this celebration I went. It's local town, and I live in a very small place at the moment in the United Kingdom. And you know, we were the only people of color there, and nobody looked at us, nobody stared at us. The cops didn't care at all. Like there's just this. To me, that was mind blowing. I spent the entire time being like, "What is happening?" Right? And even though I've gotten somewhat used to it after a long time of being abroad, it's still there's this innate. Like I was once in a small town in Idaho for a family celebration. We were the only people of color. And it was terrifying. You know, the cops pulled us over because we weren't there. It turned out we actually drove through a sundown or something. I don't remember the word for it.
Sundown town.
Yeah, sundown town. I didn't even know what it was at the time. You know, I didn't know that America was still. I mean, it's always been uncomfortable, but it's gotten worse and worse and worse. Like I drove across the country during the Obama administration, and then I drove across the country during the Trump administration. Even in that 4.5-5 year difference. It got so much more openly racist, brazenly openly racist. People will ask questions, they'll stop you. And it's funny because yes, there's racism and xenophobia everywhere. I'm not saying that there isn't colorism and racism, but that the level to which it is ever present in America, it is the first thing everyone thinks about. You go into work, it's like you are the brown woman, you have like there's no ability to like escape it in the United States. It's just so ever present. And so, you know, some of what you were talking about leaving the United States and really, you know, trying to find yourself. That's sort of what I did as well. It was just like, who am I when I'm not being defined as a person based on the color of my skin, my sexuality, and my gender by other people, whether they're the left or the right in America? It's the first thing people think of.
Yeah. The threat of being unalived is ever present in America. And I think, you know, that is the saddest part about it. Like unable to have a relationship that's not manipulative, coercive. You can't go out with your friends without covering your drink. Walk to your car without keys between your fingers. Now they're putting clothes with chemicals that on your car door or handle. So if you go in, you can like if you touch it, you faint, and they swoop in with a van or whatever. It illustrates how much of our world, and it's a global problem, but America's probably the UK, I would say the West, not just America, are really the procurers and the biggest clients of human trafficking and drug trafficking. And so everything else in between is just kind of a money laundering endeavor.
And you know, I totally agree. And you know, you talk about beyond hegemony, and I think that's really the thing is when you are playing in a world where hegemony itself is a concept that countries want. Like you look at the drug trafficking and the human trafficking and the endangered animal trafficking, right? Like the way that China has come into Africa because they're modeling on a post-colonial world. You're looking at what Russia is currently doing, what you know many countries have done. For all of history, like even going back, right? Like you going back all of history, there was a sense of like, okay, you're conquering your neighbors, you're owning land, and you're trying to survive. But what happened at some point was it wasn't about trying to survive, right? There was this commercialized, capitalized human trafficking, right? Chattel slavery. Like people, every time I bring up slavery in you know in certain contexts, people jump to like everybody had slaves for all of human history. It's complicated. Right? It's complicated. People had slaves. People didn't have chattel slavery. Like the unique horrors of chattel slavery and human trafficking as it was perpetuated once it became, you know, a commercialized, globalized enterprise. It's kind of like comparing a farm to a slaughterhouse. Like it's not the same thing. It's and when people think about think about the ways in which we've commercialized everything, I think it's really been chasing that. Hegemony's been chasing that absolute power. And so human trafficking, for example, there are like, to me, every human life matters. Every human life is equal. Every life, you want to preserve it. You want people to be happy. So the fact that there are so many, just in sheer numbers today, there are so many more people in prison in the United States. There's so many more people being human trafficked worldwide in numbers. And people are always like, well, the population has grown. But still, numbers matter. Every life is a life, right? And it's horrifying. And you're totally right. I think a part of it is that the way we view human beings today in the modern Western world is we view everybody as an asset, as a resource, instead of
as a thing,
as a
thing. Yeah.
Instead of independently valuable. And then people often like, we treat humans as animals. I'm like, we shouldn't even be treating animals like that. Like we're literally treating people like an eraser. Like
Yeah, it's incredible to digest that, and I've always been the super sensitive person around that. Like I'm a yeah. It's so much in my head right now about that. It would be like a 2 hour long live if I talked about the multitude of layers of how we dismantle this. But it's really not as difficult as we make it. It's just about, first of all, we need to humanize our children. That's They're not things. We don't have what they're doing with the legislation in the United States, trying to force women into birthing, and the way that the amount of domestic abuse, I mean, it's always been there, but it has skyrocketed since Trump went in and came out. And yeah. Sahana, you want to chime in?
I mean, I was just listening, kind of aghast, and also I haven't lived in the USA. Uh, so when I hear about your experience of it, you can literally pick out all the elements of what makes for a hegemonic culture and how that creates rot within, right? Extreme individualism, extreme resourcification of everything, pingification, as the is the colonized is the word. So everything has a monetary value attached to it. Everything, and the moment you turn everything into a viable, sellable thing, then the intrinsic value of it is gone. Whether it is just a chat over coffee, whether it is a walk down, I can't even begin to imagine how mechanical it makes life and how devoid of actual joy and actual appreciation and actual real warmth and kindness. And there, because of that, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there is this intrinsic and there is this constant hunger for material goods, things and even more things, which
Hmm.
will eventually end up in a landfill because there are just so much emptiness within that you try to fill it with stuff outside.
That's right.
And just
That's
imagine having to walk down a street not knowing when someone will take a pot shot at you just because they happen to be carrying on. I mean,
New
it's
York
insane.
City. What was it? I think it was New York. Pride. This Pride's going on right now. This Zionist guy, I can't remember his name, but he's a Zionist and he's a director of a big company. Jago is the name of it. He's caught on camera punching random women in the face.
Wow.
And he
And
just
why?
strolls off. Well, he's an a-hole, first of all. Uh, Second of all, he feels empowered to do so.
That right there that's the problem, is genuinely, and the thing is, I think Gen Z, what you're saying is it's true. There's so many wonderful people coming up, but there's this huge divide. Like, they did a recent study about middle school boys versus girls in the United States, and their political viewpoints are so far apart. It's the biggest gap they're seeing between gender in any age group. And I feel like I just surround myself with the people in Gen Z and other generations who care about these things, like both of you, like everybody at U Voice, right? Like, we've self-selected for the good people in the world, and sometimes I forget there are so many people out there, millions, maybe billions of people out there who, either for their own, like, I even not to judge, like, they've been raised like that. They've been raised to think that people don't matter. They've grown up in that world. They don't know how to break out of it. I have friends who, went to big law firms after law school, and they genuinely, they were taught that they don't even, it's hurting them, and I try to help them break out of it, but they literally feel that they can't. I literally have a friend who has $800,000 in savings and feels that he does not have enough money to be happy. He will literally go out to dinner and think about how to not buy a drink, because he literally,
You're joking, right?
no, he will literally, like, even, it's not just being stingy to other people, it's literally for himself. He's always thinking, I don't have enough money, I'm going to be unhappy, I'm going to die alone, I'm going to be miserable because I don't have
You
enough
said
money.
800,000.
Yes.
Not okay.
Yes. And that's the thing, right? There is
He's
never
white.
enough.
He's white, right?
Yes.
Because
yeah, and you think about how people like Elon Musk live, right? Like, where he's like, he's always like, and it's like they're genuinely are, I'm like, you need therapy, y'all need therapy, right? But that's the truth, is that, and the thing is, even therapy in the US has become so commercialized. I saw this great TikTok video of this girl just being like, stop paywalling human connection, because there were these people out there being like, don't tell your friends this stuff, it's trauma dumping, go tell your therapist. I'm like, that's just friendship, right? Like, stop paywalling human connection, like, for generations, for thousands of years, for millennia, right? Like, we as human beings have helped each other in society, and now it's like, pay someone to drop you off at the airport, pay someone if you need a glass of milk, if you ask your neighbor for milk, you should be paying them for that. That's to me, that's so fundamentally an opposite to what makes human beings human.
It's a purposeful disconnection, and I'll say it again. I feel like the whole field, most of the fields of science, were eugenicist, psychopathic, greedy white men who created another gaslighting and gatekeeping entity for their wealth, and to justify the oppression and enslavement of everyone else. Oh, drapetomania. You shouldn't be running away from your slavery. Here, it must be a mental disorder to not want to be a slave. And so here, the medicine is 100 lashes on your back. There was literally a mental diagnosis. And so what they do is create a problem to create a false solution to create more problems, and hence commercialization and marketing. And I took this coaching class, and the thing that bothered me about it was the whole thing was set up. Find what their weak point, find what their problem is, and then market yourself to that. And I was like, well, it just doesn't work for me, because I'm just want to help people. Like,
the commercialization of human identity is one of the worst things about modern social media, and it's one of the things we're fighting so hard against. What you say is just hit the nail on the head. Everything's a brand. So as an artist, as a musician, as both a singer and like a classical, like oil painter and sketch artist, in both cases, I cannot tell you how much I have watched in the past decade and a half the world become, it does not matter how talented you are. It literally doesn't matter what you do. You could literally just draw lines on a paper. What matters is your marketing team. How much are you spending on PR? How is your social media presence? What's your gimmick on TikTok? 99% of your time as an artist is PR and branding, and you can sell whatever it is you choose to do if you are a good marketer or brander. And you could be the most talented, have the best voice. You could be the most beautiful person wanting to get into modeling. You could be the most artistic person, talented person. If you do not have a stage presence, which so often translates to Western beauty,
Yes.
Western code switching, right? Like I know so many creators of color who go on TikTok and suddenly they have, an American accent. They're talking like a TikTok star because you have to code switch into what people want to see. You have to be as pretty as possible. And how much creators of color struggle, because when you make it a visual medium like that, um, when you make it, what you look like, literally, they did a study on like when the hands on when you do like the recipe videos and you just
Mm-hmm.
the hands, when the hands are like mine or like yours or like ours, right? Like when they're dark
Mm-hmm.
hands, people don't watch the videos as much. Same recipe,
Yeah.
white hands. And so the amount that you struggle when you're competing in a world where everything has become um, about marketing is crazy. I saw this interesting study that actually there were more predominantly black TV shows in the 1980s and 90s than today.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's funny because as a kid you always think there's going to be progress. We're going one way in humankind, or it's going to get better over time. And I feel like we really did backtrack over the past decade. Like 8-9 years, whatever it is now.
Yeah.
It's sad. We got to fight that. We have to fight that, because if you let it's kind of sounds dystopian, but let the corporate overlords control you. But if you let your feed and your algorithm and things that you're seeing online, most people get their news today from social media and from what people select to show you. If you get all of your news from that, you're getting a very, very biased view of the world. You're literally living in a bubble. And
Mm-hmm.
you can't, at some point you're going to fall into the culture. You're not going to be able to see reality or really understand, like be willing to hear people who maybe don't come from the same background as you do, because you're never shown that. So you think they're a fringe minority, when in reality there's so many people in the world who think like that, but you're told that from what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gosh, yeah. Yeah. Ah, there's so much. There's so much.
Well, I mean, I love the work you're doing. It sounds like you're really, really helping people, get through that, and I think that's very inspiring.
Well, yeah, my goal is, one of the things that I always see is that with branding, with marketing, it's a niche, 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 niche. And what that has done, just like the sciences, breaking it apart, isolates it, and then it makes an expert in one area or another. And so one of the main things of my coaching practice and mentoring is you must cultivate a polymathic mind. And when you cultivate a polymathic mind, you learn about more than one thing, and then you learn how they connect. Because everything is about connection. It's just that the pebble in the pool that's making the ripple has been blocked by a corporation, has been blocked by a brand, so it's not doing what it's supposed to naturally do, ripple out and ripple back in. And so that's the problem with the world right now. We
Yeah.
get blocked at this wall, you know, and then we want to peek around and say, what's something else is over there. We feel it in our spirit that something else is there. But everybody on the other side of the wall where you are is saying, oh, there's nothing over there.
Yeah.
And we've got all these little, what are they called? What do they call those guys and women? Plants. We've got all these plants,
Yeah.
not the green ones, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
ones that are there to distract us. And I call that the celebrities, to distract us and make it seem like they're not slaves and you could be exactly like them. And so that's where the illusion of freedom has been built, especially in America. It's an illusion of
Yeah.
freedom. And nobody believed me when I first left the first time and I said, I'm so much freer. I
Yeah.
feel like a weight's off my shoulder. They don't get it. And so, and I've been in all of those arenas where your face, your body, and the Hollywood and all that. I've been in all those arenas, and I was just like, "Oh, this is sick."
Yeah, yeah,
Why?
no, it is, and it's young people who are so, and this is why I try my best not to hate the individual person and to understand
No,
that there's a systemic, like it's a systems problem. We ended up
that's
here. There were some, really bad decisions that somehow collectively got made a lot in the 1800s, and we're still
right.
paying for them, right? Like I try to understand that and to give grace to people who simply have not been taught better or have not learned better. But at the same time, I'm learning as I grow older to hold people accountable for their
Yes.
regressive views. Like I know a lot of people, right? Like one of the things that you hear in a lot of America is like, you're raised in a certain religion, let's say, right? Like, and you're taught that. And so like, really, how much can we blame them? And I'm like, look, we've held people accountable for their terrible religious beliefs around the entire world, but as it should, because it's a choice. You're choosing to believe this, right? To say that my religion demands that I kill someone or hurt someone or hate someone on the color of their skin or whatever, that's your choice, right? It's your choice. And it's not the same as the color of your skin, which is immutable, or your sexuality, which is immutable. It's your choice. And we hold people accountable for that. And somehow, and when I feel like what's happened is we give people excuses and then they grab onto it. I don't need to change because it's not my fault. I was raised to believe these hateful things, right? Because that's just part of my culture or whatever. And that's kind of insulting to people who practice the same religion and don't believe those hateful things, right? Like, so I think that, there's got to be more accountability for just, you choose to take the actions that you do. You're the person you are. And yes, there's a systems problem. And I am all about working to fix the system. I think everything we do at YouVoice, we're primarily thinking about is like, how do you fix the system? Because we get the system is broken. It's hurting people. Sometimes there are these amazing creators and I watch them slowly fall, like, they slowly like lose their way. They start thinking like, what, I also deserve to get paid well. I'm going to take this one brand deal. And then it becomes, it's like, you can see it happen because they have no choice. And I'm never going to blame someone for the ways in which they choose to take care of themselves or, how their view has been changed by the system. So I agree, we have to change the system. But at the same time, you can't do that alone. And I'm so proud of and happy and inspired by the superheroes who take that extra step, who think this is my problem. I'm going to be one of the pallbearers or whatever it is, the people with the lamp in the front. I know that everyone can't do that, but for the people who can, they deserve to have all the support they can do that.
Yeah, I think this is why we do what we do, Sahana. We're at least trying. Yeah, but it's not even my goal.
You're succeeding.
Well, no, yeah. Well, I'm not. I never started any of my projects. EQ above IQ, parenting with emotional intelligence, my book writing, children's books, stuff like none of that stuff was ever created with the mind to make billions of dollars. It was always about making change first within myself and then letting that resonate out to everyone else. I just think that is more of the bartering system than I have all this that I've learned. Let me share it with you. And I think that was the original foundation because I think we're just here to learn and share.
That's beautiful.
Okay.
It was so wonderful meeting you. I'm so glad. Bye.
Lovely meeting you, Shari.
Lovely meeting you.
Oh, Sahana had to check out a little early. She's got family obligations, but so yeah, it's really great for me. I think TikTok was kind of like the epitome of kind of what you're doing on a written media. Are you guys going to be doing something like kind of not like TikTok, because I think it could be improved as well because there's a lot of banning on TikTok.
I think it's also advertisement. So TikTok is, I think, the epitome of a good content creator platform. I love TikTok. Right. I think they've really mastered the algorithm, but they're a content creator platform. Their primary goal is to make people become famous and be influencers. And I think they've done that really well because unlike other similar platforms, they are much more egalitarian, although still there are problems, right? Their audience is still going to be racist, sexist, all that stuff. But they've done a really good job of thinking about how their algorithm can fight that and about thinking about how to promote many different types of content creators to many different types of audiences. One of the downsides of TikTok is that because it's a content creator platform, it is not actually social and it's not actually media. It is still creating huge problems where people think what they see is the truth when it is a curated feed based on what they like and interact with their so much in a bubble. TikTok is the epitome of bubble media. And second, there's a lot of propaganda and a lot of advertisement, especially over the last 6 to 7 months. TikTok has transitioned into primarily prioritizing TikTok shop and advertising because this allows their creators to make genuine bank. There are people on TikTok, right, who are making so much money. If I had the number of followers I have on LinkedIn, on TikTok, I would be set for life, right? Like they're making bank. Right? Like they're serious money because but that's good, right? They're a content creator platform. And unlike other content creator platforms that don't pay their creators, they've started to think about how do we actually pay our creators? How do we make it sustainable?
Right.
But the way that they realize that's possible is through TikTok Shop. It's not the same way YouTube does, where they pay content creators a lot for views or for content
Mm-hmm.
engagement. It's through selling products. And so that's why so much of your feed is selling products, or it's a subtle sell, even if they don't tag the company or they don't say it's a sponsored post.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, I think TikTok does really well what it does, which is content creator short form video format. It's trying to get into longer form video. We are very much about bringing back the original essence of social and media. So we're not really even a TikTok competitor,
Mm-hmm.
except I guess that, you know, if you have free time, you can do one thing or the other. But we are very much about reconnecting to a small group of people, making real human connections, working with those people on actually creating movements that create real world impact. We found that to be very rewarding in our test groups. We've seen that creates real long-term lasting friendships, because you're working on something that's for someone else. It's not networking for either one of you. It's not about becoming famous or growing your brand. So if you still want to be a content creator, you want to grow your brand, your podcast, you want to advertise your products or consulting services, you know, or you want to advertise your brand, TikTok's still one of the best places to go. It's still a content creator platform. We are not a content creator platform. We're not about personal branding. We're not about influencers. We're about returning to the essence of what social media used to be. We don't promote parasocial relationships. We're all about small groups, like having real conversations with people. Of course, people are still going to be excited about virality, but for us, the karma points that you have track the good that you do in the real world much more than they track how frequently you post or how outrageously you post on the platform. So if you are truly working on a movement in one of our communities, you're going out there, let's say you're doing an ecological cleanup program or whatever it is, you know, your goal is to, end human trafficking in a certain country, or to help promote
Mm-hmm.
the saving of species, and you succeed at that, and that's like your goal, and you've worked on this all year, and maybe you post once a month, maybe you post once a year, that post is
Mm-hmm.
going to get promoted so much more than somebody who might be posting every day but not be working in
Mm-hmm.
these communities to actually bring about great cause. So we spend so much time working on patents. We've spent so much, literally everything that you would do as a tech company, but as a nonprofit and as a group of people around the world from many, many different countries, over 30 countries, thinking about what do we want our world to look like, and how do we reward people for the actions we actually want them to take, instead of the buying, consumer, sell, personal branding. Of course, that's still super important, because we live in a world where that's become so important. And I think TikTok and LinkedIn and other platforms that do it worse than TikTok are sort of the epitome of that, but we're not a direct competitor at all.
I love that though. I just love the whole premise of it because it's so more what I think the essence of the world should be. I mean, just getting the truth of things is such a challenge because you've got counter information now. Now, who in the world would have ever thought that our own government would purposely create YouTube channels and other things to confuse and to disseminate false information to create discord, amongst people? But it's happening all the time, and this has been happening for a good 100 years, maybe longer. That counterintelligence.
Yeah.
So I'm just so happy that you came on and shared this with everyone because I know that me personally, I've been searching for that. I've been searching for that type of platform. And as we kind of wrap it up, where can people find you?
Yeah, so it's the platform is going to be working on launching it later this year and next year. We already have really wonderful stories from around the world that people can read, because we've started to publish long form articles. It's one of our first communities is actually having a space for people to have their voices heard. We have a dedicated editorial team, and that also allows us to get our word out before our full platform is launched. So we're at yuvoice.org. So UVoice, there isn't the O there. I can't spell today. YUV.org. But also, if you Google me, and it comes up, and if you just go to myname.com or .org, it forwards to our website as well. So Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to continue building our community. I'm so glad to have met you and to be on here. Thank you so much for your patience again with my health and everything. So I'm really glad to be on here. I'm so excited to be a part of your community and you to be a part of ours. And just, this is how we're going to change the world. And I believe in you. So I'm really thankful to have been here.
Well, I'm just glad you made it. I have learned through this journey of life that most things are not personal. And so um, I don't have that hypersensitivity that I might have, because once you start to find yourself and you start to love yourself and you start to grow within yourself, the things that other people do don't feel personal anymore. You actually kind of start to create more empathy for the people around you, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
End of story. And so I don't know what it feels like to be in your shoes with your teeth and whatever, and virus and all the other stuff, but I know it probably didn't feel too good.
No, it's been a month. It's funny because one of my close friends and I, we met end of last year, and we were like, 2024 is going to be our year. And I mean, I live so comfortably. I feel very privileged. I feel very lucky to do what I'm doing and be able to do it full time, be able to work with so many great people around the world. I don't want to say it hasn't been my year, but it has been so hard in ways that I did not anticipate. But such is life, and it's wonderful. It's a true joy and pleasure to even be able to go through it. So
Yeah, we're here. We
we're
woke
here.
up this morning. And that's what I want to encourage everyone as we go out of this episode of Beyond Hegemony, to have gratitude for the fact that you're still here. Sometimes it's really hard, I know, but we are having our grand awakening, and I always say we can, CAN, we can collectively awaken now. And if we do, we will have that global shift that's always really uncomfortable when you turn left to right and all that stuff. We get there. We get there. So thanks, Ishari. I will
Thank you so much for having me.
thank, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.
That was